3:17 a.m. The world's quiet. 3:17 a.m. The world's quiet. But in my head, it's a battlefield. Screams you'd never hear. Fires you'd never see. Wounds that never bled outside but cut deeper than any blade. This kind of war doesn't make headlines. It doesn't come with rescue teams. It doesn't even come with witnesses. They never heard me cry. Never saw me break. So they thought I was fine. But silence isn't peace. It's pain, perfected. They'll never understand that kind of silence, because they never had to survive in it. They never heard the moment I broke, because it was quiet. That's the twisted part. You can break in silence and still hear the shatter echo inside you for years. No one flinched. No one paused. The world kept spinning while I cracked beneath the weight of 1,000 unseen things. Silence isn't just the absence of sound. It's the presence of pressure, of restraint, of everything you wanted to scream, sealed behind a look, a nod, a lie like I'm good. I wasn't good, but I got good at pretending. I was the child who stopped crying when I realized no one was listening. The teen who learned that opening up only made people uncomfortable. The adult who armored up with indifference because vulnerability was a luxury I couldn't afford. They never heard me cry out, because I trained myself not to. And that silence, it became my shadow, a constant companion, not comforting, not warm, just there, always there. You'd be surprised how loud a silent life can feel. You walk into rooms full of noise, chatter, laughter, music, and still feel like a ghost. Invisible. Unfelt. Just floating through the spaces people occupy, while carrying your own storm in your bones. People love a loud success story, a comeback with a soundtrack. But mine didn't come with cheers or closure. It came at 3 a.m., when my hands were shaking and my chest was caving in and no one knew. No one even thought to check. And somehow, I kept going. They call that strength. But here's the truth. It's not strength when you have no choice. It's survival. And survival is messy. It's ugly. It's not romantic, not graceful, not poetic. It's crying into your pillow so no one hears. It's showing up with red eyes and saying it's allergies. It's holding it all together with the emotional equivalent of duct tape. But they don't see that. They see you quiet and say, "You're so calm. You're so strong. I wish I was more like you." No, you don't. Because if you were like me, you'd know what it's like to be comforted by the dark, not because it's peaceful, but because it hides the pain better. You'd know what it's like to stare at the ceiling every night and make deals with yourself. Just one more day. Just one more breath. Just one more smile. They don't hear the internal negotiations, the compromises we make with ourselves just to stay functional. And when we do stay, when we manage to keep going, they think we're fine. They celebrate the performance, praise the mask, clap for the illusion. But deep down, you know, they'll never understand the courage it takes just to exist when silence becomes your language. They'll never get that sometimes silence isn't a choice. It's a symptom, of pain, of pressure, of stories too heavy to carry in words. And yet, we carry them. Alone. Always alone. Because we learned early that not all silence is peaceful, some of it is self-defense. Some of it is survival. You learn to shut up before they tell you to. You learn to hold it in so no one rolls their eyes. You learn to disappear emotionally before they push you away physically. And then one day, you wake up and realize you don't even know how to ask for help anymore. You don't know the sound of your own voice when it's not whispering through cracked glass. And worst of all, you're scared that if you did speak up, no one would stay to listen anyway. That's what silence becomes, a fear-shaped void. A defense that starts as a shield and slowly turns into a cage. But here's the plot twist. The same silence that tried to bury you can become your weapon. You can turn it on them. Use it as your boundary. Let it guard you instead of choke you. Because silence isn't weakness. It's the training ground. It's where warriors are forged. In the stillness. In the shadows. In the spaces no one claps for. That's where we're built. Not in victory, but in void. Not in applause, but in absence. So let them talk. Let them fill the room with their noise. We've got something they'll never have. The strength to rebuild in silence. The resilience to suffer quietly and still come out harder, louder, sharper than ever before. We are the ones who bled without bleeding. Who screamed without a sound. Who survived without being seen. They'll never understand that power. And they don't have to. Learning to disappear, I didn't just go quiet. I was trained to disappear. Not with a lesson plan or a classroom, but with looks. With sighs. With punishments for speaking up. With the kind of silence that shamed you into silence of your own. You speak and they say, don't make it a big deal. You cry and they say, you're being dramatic. You feel deeply and suddenly, you're the problem. So you learn. You adapt. You build a whole new language, one that doesn't involve your voice. It starts small. A pause before saying what's on your mind. A quick calculation. If I tell the truth, will they leave? Will they attack? Will they twist it? Eventually, you just stop saying anything. Because silence causes less damage than rejection. Because disappearing hurts less than being called too much. I learned to retreat before the world asked me to. I became a ghost in my own story. You sit in groups, but you are not in them. They laugh. You smile. They speak. You nod. They talk over you like you are not there because you've made it easy for them to forget you are. People say they want honesty, but only if it's palatable. Only if it confirms what they already believe. Only if it doesn't expose their part in the damage. So you play the role, the chill one, the easygoing one, the one who doesn't mind. But inside, you're screaming. Not for attention, not for sympathy, but just to exist without being punished for it. Disappearing isn't always physical. Sometimes, it's emotional erasure. You shrink your reactions, dilute your dreams, sand down your personality so no one gets scraped by your reality. You become pleasant, approachable, forgettable, and they love you for it. Because they don't have to deal with the truth of who you are. You don't make waves. You don't challenge the atmosphere. You just adapt, endlessly. You flex your identity to fit the contours of whatever room you're in until you don't even recognize yourself. But they call that mature. They call that chill. They applaud your emotional flexibility, never realizing it's born from trauma, not enlightenment. Because disappearing is not peace. It's suffocation disguised as self-control. I stopped asking for space, started giving it. Even when I needed someone to sit with me in the dark, I learned to light my own candle and pretend it was enough. The hardest part isn't being alone, it's realizing you're alone even in the presence of others. That ache, that hollowness in the middle of noise. That's what disappearing feels like. And the worst part, you become so good at it, even when someone finally says, "You can talk to me." You don't. Because the wiring has changed. You hear kindness, but don't believe it. You see open doors, but you don't walk through them. You've been conditioned to expect rejection, so now you pre-reject yourself just to skip the pain. But here's the dirty secret about disappearing. It doesn't erase the pain. It just isolates it. You start internalizing everything. Maybe it's my fault. Maybe I am too much. Maybe I really don't deserve to be heard. You twist your silence into self-blame. And after a while, you stop even wanting to be understood. You convince yourself the world wouldn't know what to do with your truth anyway. So you bury it, layer after layer, smile after smile, joke after joke, until no one suspects a thing. Not even you. But silence doesn't mean healing. It just means hidden. And anything hidden will eventually rot. It'll seep out in ways you can't control. In the way you flinch at softness. In the way compliments feel like manipulation. In the way you keep relationships just out of arm's reach so you don't get cut. That's the cost of disappearing. You don't just lose your voice, you lose your right to use it. Even when the pain demands release, you silence yourself before anyone else has to. That's not peace. That's trauma camouflaged in politeness. And I carried that weight for years. But not anymore. Because one day, I woke up and realized I never disappeared. They just never looked hard enough. I was always there. Underneath the silence. Beneath the mask. Behind a rehearsed small talk. I wasn't broken. I was buried. And now I'm digging myself out. Word by word. Truth by truth. Breath by breath. The world may not have space for me, but I'll carve it with my bare hands if I have to. I won't apologize for existing. Won't shrink to keep people comfortable. Won't vanish just to keep the peace. Because the ones who deserve me will never ask me to disappear to be loved. And the ones who did, they can choke on the echo I left behind. What they don't see, they see you in the hallway. They see you in meetings. They see you at family dinners, birthdays, on Instagram stories, and they think you're doing great. But they don't see it. They don't see you. Because what they see is curated. It's what you let survive the edit. What makes it past the inner war, the quiet panic, the heavy breath held between sentences. They don't see the raw, the unfiltered, the real. They don't see how many times you've rehearsed saying, "I'm okay," until the lie rolled off your tongue smoother than any truth ever did. They don't see the migraines caused by suppressed tears. The tension locked in your shoulders because you've been bracing for a breakdown that never comes. They don't see the self-doubt curled into your gut like a second spine. They don't know you flinch when your phone rings. That every unread message feels like a responsibility you can't meet. That silence in a conversation isn't peace for you, it's analysis. Did I say too much? Was I too weird? Did I ruin it again? They don't see you talking yourself out of leaving the bed in the morning. Arguing with your reflection in the mirror like it's your worst enemy. They don't see the scars on your mind just because they're not on your skin. They think you're strong. You're killing it. You're always calm. But calm doesn't mean okay. Calm can be collapse in disguise. Because you've learned to function while breaking. It's your superpower. You can give a perfect presentation with a panic attack simmering just under your rib cage. You can crack jokes while slowly unraveling inside. You've mastered the art of falling apart without making a sound. They call that resilience. They praise you for it. But the truth, you were never supposed to get this good at pretending. They don't see what it costs you to make them comfortable. They don't know how loud a compliment sounds when you don't believe it. How much effort it takes to respond to "how are you?" without crumbling. Because for you, being fine is a full-time performance. One that no one buys a ticket for. One that gets no applause. One where the spotlight only burns, never warms. And when you finally do open up, they either flinch or minimize. "Oh, I had no idea. You should have said something. You always seem so put together." That's the point. Because when we weren't put together, the world punished us for it. They only like their survivors silent and smiling. So you learn the rituals, the fake laugh that buys you time, the nod you do when zoning out in dissociation, the playlist that keeps the panic just barely beneath the surface, the phrase "I'm just tired" that covers every possible form of collapse. It's all muscle memory now. Because vulnerability has never felt safe. Because the people who asked you to open up once used your truths as weapons. They turned your softness into target practice. So now, you carry everything inside. Your pain doesn't get handed off. It doesn't get witnessed. It gets folded, small, creased, stacked, pushed deep into mental drawers until one day, those drawers burst and you've got a flood with no warning. But they won't see that either. They'll just call you moody, difficult, cold. Because what they don't see is how you became this version of you. They don't see the origin story, the betrayal that taught you silence, the heartbreak that taught you walls, the trauma that taught you survival. They don't see that you used to be soft. You used to trust first, speak fast, laugh loud. But life taught you caution. Experience taught you editing. Pain taught you strategy. So now you move carefully. Now you speak in filters. Now you keep 90% of yourself tucked behind invisible armor. And they wonder why you're so guarded. They'll never know the strength it takes to show up every day with this weight. To walk into rooms with a smile when your chest is full of storms. To keep working, laughing, loving, existing while managing a mind at war. That's what they don't see. But you know what? You do. You see yourself on those low days. You see your efforts when no one claps. You see the courage it takes just to continue. So let them believe what they want. Let them be amazed by the surface. You don't owe them the depths. Because even if no one sees it, what you're doing is heroic. Not loud. Not dramatic. Not headline worthy. Just consistent. Invisible strength, the kind that keeps the world turning without ever being thanked. Let them think you're fine. Let them pat you on the back and walk away. You don't need their validation. You know the truth. You know what it cost. You know how heavy that silence really is. And one day, if someone really sees you, if they notice the tired in your eyes instead of the smile on your lips, if they sit with your silence instead of filling it, hold them close. Because in this world of superficial check-ins and convenience care, someone who listens to what you don't say is a rare kind of magic. Until then, walk quiet, walk proud, walk steady. You're carrying more than they'll ever know, and you're doing it like a warrior. There's a moment, not loud, not dramatic, where something inside you shifts. It doesn't come with fireworks, doesn't announce itself with applause. It's a slow burn, a soft snap, a breath that feels different. One day, you look in the mirror and don't see a victim. You don't see the mess they left behind. You don't see the apology they tried to make you wear. You see the fire, still dim, still flickering, but alive. And that's the beginning. They never tell you this part. The part where you start building, not because you're healed, but because you're done waiting to be. Done waiting for closure. Done waiting for someone to notice. Done waiting for an apology that won't come from people who don't even think they owe one. This is when you pick up the pieces without ceremony. You patch the cracks with grit. You pour concrete where they left holes. You stitch yourself into something solid, not perfect, but unbreakable. Because you are not building a comeback for them to cheer. You are not performing anymore. You're rising for you. Here's the part where silence becomes power. Not the old kind where you hit and swallowed and shrank. But a new kind, intentional silence. Boundaried silence. Commanding silence. The kind that doesn't explain itself. That doesn't overextend for validation. That sits still and dares the world to underestimate you. You stop feeling the need to overshare just to prove you're real. You stop chasing connections that only echo back your pain with pity. You stop translating your trauma for people too lazy to learn your language. Now, you walk in with your silence like armor, not as a defense, but as presence. You become the calm that makes people nervous. The quiet that makes noise look like weakness. You become what they feared you were all along. Someone who didn't need them to survive. Because healing isn't always loud. Sometimes it's just not reacting. Not replying to the disrespect. Not flinching when someone leaves. Not explaining your worth to people committed to misunderstanding it. They think you've changed, become colder, distant, intimidating. Good. Let them feel that space. Let them sit in the silence they created. They don't realize that the version of you they miss was built on bending, built on breaking, built on exhaustion disguised as loyalty. Now, you are your own sanctuary. There is a brutal kind of peace in the silence. Not because everything is okay. Not because the trauma vanished. But because you stopped letting it define you. You stopped bleeding for people who only watched. Stopped performing stability for the comfort of others. And instead you chose presence. You chose clarity. You chose yourself. You became your own audience. Your own rescue. Your own thunder. And you did it quietly. This isn't just resilience. It's rebirth. You start saying no like a prayer. You start deleting messages you don't owe a response to. You stop explaining your silence and let it echo back everything they didn't want to hear. You stop feeling guilty for being unavailable, unreachable, unapologetic. You stop treating your peace like a guest and start honoring it like a throne. You clean house, not out of spite, not out of rage, but because your spirit is sacred now and you refuse to host anything that doesn't honor it. They won't understand the silence. They'll think it's anger, or pride, or coldness. But we know different. We know it's healing with discipline. It's peace forged through pain. It's the kind of quiet that hums with truth so loud, it cracks the bones of everything that tried to break you. You became the version of you that doesn't beg, that doesn't perform, that doesn't chase anything but freedom. You became the stillness they can't disturb. You became untouchable. So let them misread you. Let them call it detachment. Let them gossip, speculate, spin the narrative however they need to sleep better. You don't live there anymore. You don't owe them insight. You're busy building, busy rising, busy becoming. And every part of that deserves to be quiet, deserves to be sacred, deserves to be unbothered. Because this silence is power, the kind they'll never understand. You wanna know what really scares them? Not your rage, not your outbursts, not your broken moments. They can handle mess as long as it's loud, as long as they can label it, as long as it fits into a narrative they understand. What they can't handle is the moment you go silent and unbothered. When you stop reacting, when you stop playing the role, when you sit still in your truth and let it radiate without defending it, that's when they get uncomfortable. That's when they flinch. Because quiet confidence, that's terrifying to people who only know control through chaos. They're not scared of your pain. They're scared that it didn't break you. They're scared that after everything you didn't collapse. You evolved. They see it in the way you carry yourself now. That stillness in your eyes. That poise when you say nothing. That boundary they can't push anymore. It unsettles them. Because deep down, they know they don't have access to you anymore. You are not begging. You are not explaining. You are not seeking permission to exist. You've outgrown the version of yourself that made them feel powerful. And now, they don't know how to hold you because they never learned to respect you. See, people learn how to treat you by the reactions you give. You flinch, they pounce. You cry, they gaslight. You explain, they twist. But now, you sit in silence and watch them trip over their own narratives. You let the discomfort hang in the room. Let the weight of your absence do the talking. Let your non-response echo louder than any scream ever could. And they panic. Because when they can't control your voice, when they can't manipulate your reaction, when they no longer hold emotional real estate inside your chest, they lose their power. They fear the version of you that doesn't need validation. The version that walks into a room and doesn't scan for approval. That doesn't rush to apologize for taking up space. That doesn't dilute their truth to make others comfortable. You are becoming what they never expected, sovereign. You are no longer shaped by their projections, no longer defined by their comfort levels, no longer a character in their drama. You're the author now, and the pen doesn't shake in your hand anymore. They say you've changed. Yes, you did. You stopped bleeding just to prove you could hurt. You stopped opening old wounds so people would understand they caused them. You stopped waiting for people to show up who never planned to. You are no longer offering access to people who only knew how to consume you. Let them mislabel it as pride, as ego, as arrogance. We know what it really is. A boundary built from surviving what they never had the capacity to handle. You used to explain your triggers. Now you just leave. You used to justify your distance. Now you just are. You used to be soft where you should have been steel. Used to let guilt play puppeteer with your spine. But you grew teeth. You grew silence with claws. And they weren't ready for that. They weren't ready for the day your silence stopped being passive and became purposeful. They fear the ones who can walk away with nothing but dignity. The ones who don't slam doors just vanish. The ones who forgive without returning. Who understand closure is something you give yourself, not beg for from people who broke the door in the first place. They fear the power of someone who has nothing left to lose because everything worth keeping already lives within them. That's who you are now. That's what this silence forged. Not a victim. Not a product of pain. But a presence that needs no permission to exist. Let them stare. Let them wonder how you got so untouchable. Let them whisper about the silence you wear like armor now. Let them feel every bit of absence they once called too quiet. Because the truth is this: you found power in places they never bothered to look. In the cracks. In the collapse. In the nights you nearly gave up. In the days you dragged yourself forward anyway. They'll never understand that kind of strength because they never had to build it. But you did. And you wear it well. So here you are. Not loud. Not looking for attention. Not needing applause. Just present. Just breathing. Just unbothered. And they'll never know what it took to get here. They'll only see what they can't control and call it intimidating. Let them. Because what they really fear is the sound of your silence reminding them. You no longer belong to anyone's narrative but your own. There's no music playing. No crowd chanting your name. No grand cinematic moment of arrival. But you're here. And that's more powerful than any soundtrack could ever be. Because no one saw the moments that almost ended you. No one witnessed the nights your breathing was the only proof you were alive. No one heard your silent vows: I won't die like this. I won't disappear in this pain. I will make it mean something. And now, you've done exactly that. You've taken silence and carved it into stone. Built a foundation out of every buried scream, every swallowed truth, every quiet battle. You're not just surviving anymore. You're leading. This isn't about being healed. It's about being honest. It's not about being fearless. It's about being unapologetically afraid and still standing. You stopped trying to erase the parts of you that shook. You stopped editing the narrative to sound more digestible for people who wouldn't stomach the truth anyway. Now you walk as the full version of yourself. Raw, unfiltered, scarred, sacred. And the silence, it comes with you. Not as baggage, but as evidence, as history, as power. Because every quiet moment you survived proves one thing: they couldn't break you. Not fully. Not forever. You learned to hear the world differently. You hear the spaces between words, the tone behind a laugh, the weight behind "I'm fine." You become fluent in the language of pain, and that fluency makes you dangerous. Because now, you can't be fooled. You see what's real. You hear what's hidden. And that vision, it makes you a guide, a mirror, a lighthouse for anyone still stumbling through the dark. You carry a torch lit in silence, and in doing so, you light the way. You've learned that the loudest power doesn't come from your throat. It comes from your presence, from how you walk into a room without shrinking, from how you look people in the eye without fear, from how you don't chase anymore. That's what real power feels like. Still, steady, unbothered, unapologetic. And it radiates, even when you don't speak a word. Let them keep asking, "What happened to you? You used to be so soft. You're so different now." You are different because you had to be. You learn that compassion doesn't mean self-sacrifice, that kindness without boundaries leads to burnout, that silence can be sacred or it can be suffocating, and only you get to decide which it becomes. This final version of you, it doesn't need to be palatable. It doesn't need to be liked. It just needs to be true. And that truth, that's where the real fire lives. Not in revenge, not in drama, not in proving anyone wrong, but in waking up every day free. Free from needing them to get it. Free from giving away energy that was always meant for your own becoming. Free from thinking you had to suffer to be worthy of peace. You are not here to convince. You are not here to entertain. You are not here to fit into anyone's idea of enough. You are here to take up your space in full silence and dare the world to sit with it. Because here's the thing they'll never understand. You don't rise out of silence by filling it with noise. You rise by owning it, by walking steady into the unknown, by carrying your shadows without shame, by standing tall with your scars exposed like armor. You rise in how you protect your peace. You rise in how you show up, even when no one claps. You rise in how you choose to live, not in spite of your silence, but because of it. You rise quietly, brutally, bravely, and you don't owe a single person an explanation. So this is where the story ends or begins, depending on who's watching. This is for the ones who were told they were too much, and became exactly enough for themselves. For the ones who were erased, and came back louder in presence than in voice. For the ones who sat alone with their pain, and stitched it into a flag they now wave without shame. This is your anthem. No instruments, just heartbeat, just breath, just truth. You built yourself in silence, now let that silence speak. If this hit you in the chest, if it felt like I was reading your memories out loud, if something in you finally exhaled after holding it together for too long, then don't just scroll. Subscribe. Not for views, not for clout, not for likes. Subscribe to the quiet revolution. to the power they'll never understand, to the voice that doesn't need a mic to make mountains move. We're not here to get loud. We're here to get heard. Welcome to the silence. Let's burn.